Welcome back to My Body, My Pod. Today's episode is in partnership with Abortion in America. This story was filmed during their Austin convening earlier this year, which I was really fortunate to be able to attend. It's a national effort to lift up personal stories about the impact of abortion bans, and it was co-founded by my good friends Cecile Richards, Caitlin Joshua, and Lauren Peterson. I cannot tell you how important these stories are and how brave these storytellers are. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing them and hearing from them and making the connection between what they've experienced in their lives and how important this work we're all doing together is. Their mission is to make sure voices like Riata's are heard. She and her husband faced an impossible situation. Their first pregnancy had severe fetal abnormalities. Raised Catholic on a ranch in Wyoming, she was once opposed to abortion until she had her own experience. Her story is a reminder that abortion care is health care. Listening to lived experiences matters more than political talking points.
My name is Riata Walker. I am from Wyoming. So about 5 years ago, I had a termination for medical reasons for my first pregnancy and wanted daughter. My husband and I were very excited to have a baby, and we found out at 21 weeks that our daughter had fetal abnormalities and chromosomal problems, and we were given the opportunity to terminate by induced labor and delivery at 22 weeks in Colorado, and also then got a birth and death certificate for our daughter, and yet that is still an abortion. At the time, I knew we were making a choice to terminate the pregnancy, but it wasn't like I really registered it as an abortion per se. And I certainly didn't have the time to even process that all the way through. I didn't have the mental bandwidth in that time of crisis to realize the legal ramifications, especially with all the bans going into place in the coming years and things, that this really was an abortion, and that if this had happened to us even a couple years later, we would have been facing additional challenges in even getting that care.
Something else that I think is important to understand about Riata's story, and I did get to meet her and her daughter in Austin, is she's a mom. And most folks who need abortion care, who have abortions, are already parents. So there's a common misperception about abortion care and how it's accessed and who accesses it. And what we know is it's usually folks who already have families and have to make these tough choices and have the experience to understand what's best for their bodies and their families and their own children.
So I grew up Catholic and in a pretty conservative state, ranching family. So I saw abortion in two different ways. I grew up with abortion is totally recognized in rape, incest, and danger to the mother, and I got that. I never thought about it deeper than that. I never considered a situation like mine where there was an issue with a baby. I always just thought if there's a pregnancy and it makes it to term, it's a healthy baby. I just didn't see it that way. And yet on the other side of that, I grew up ranching and I saw abnormalities, with the cattle and the sheep. And that is a natural thing. It happens. And I witnessed that. And so then being put in that situation, it really did make sense when it happened to me. It just caused me to think deeper than just the surface level, what I had been told and believed without processing any further than rape, incest, and danger to the mother. And then I realized that I really was always pro-choice, even though I said I was pro-life, but I was always pro-choice because I always recognized that there was a choice.
So one of the things that Riata said that I want to underline is it's okay to change your mind, and we don't want to shame or blame people when they change their mind. We did a lot of research, Reproductive Freedom for All, after the election, focus groups, trying to understand how to talk to these voters. And what we've learned is when voters get the facts about abortion bans and how they're impacting their communities, and politicians that are trying to take away those fundamental freedoms, they are motivated and they do change their mind. If we approach them in an accusatory posture, if we are not willing to give them the benefit of the doubt about their lived experience and why they might not automatically identify as pro-choice or for abortion rights, we're closing the door on important conversations that can really persuade and shift hearts and minds. And that's why the work that we're collaborating on with Abortion in America is so important, because nothing breaks through and is as powerful in changing hearts and minds as those first person stories like Riata's.
So after going through a termination and realizing that, I had the privileges that I had, being a white married woman and in a conservative state, but I had the means to go to another state. I had family to stay with. I had other family who, paid for hotel rooms for us to get that care. My doctor referred me down to maternal fetal medicine specialists down there. And I had insurance to help pay for the medical bills that accrued because of that procedure. I had privileges that then suddenly, after going through the experience and hearing other stories, that I didn't even realize were privileges until I lived it and heard other people's stories. And then I realized, wow, other people aren't afforded the options that I was. And this is not okay. And there's no way to draw a line in the sand for what, on my daughter's death certificate says fetal abnormalities. And yet I still had people in my life tell me that that there was a chance that she could have been a miracle, that I didn't have the right to make that choice for my daughter and for my family. And at the end of the day, we don't get to make the choices for other people and what's right for them and their families. And so it didn't take very long, once I was thrown into this world and actually having to think through it of what if my circumstances had been different? What would I have done? How would I have felt? And then it just really changed my perspective on the entire issue because I just knew more.
So I think Riata's story really illustrates a couple of really important points that we make as an abortion rights movement, and how since the Dobbs decision, we've really been able to break through and move voters who traditionally thought of themselves as, quote, pro-life, much like Riata did. Because reproductive freedom really is about the freedom to decide if, when, and how to have a family, the freedom to make those tough decisions about your own healthcare and bodily autonomy. And when you think about it that way, as Riata's story, very personal story, illustrates, it completely shifts the way you think about abortion access and the healthcare that obviously her family needed and that she needed, and that, she was able to legally obtain, and as she points out, had the privilege to obtain because of her social status, her class, and the support systems she had in place.
You don't want to beat up people for learning new information. It's okay for us to look at our past selves and say, I was coming from a place of ignorance. And now that my eyes have been opened, I believe this, I understand this, and you can too. My challenge to people who would say that they are pro-life, even with exceptions or maybe not at all, is to dig a little deeper and to turn that decision off in your mind for a little bit and just listen to some stories and listen to where people are coming from. And just try to understand. Don't try to agree. Just try to understand where they're coming from and why they might have made that decision. Opening yourself to somebody else's reality can really change how you view the world. It may not ultimately change your viewpoint, but it might. And in the end, even if all it does is make you a little bit kinder and more compassionate, that in and of itself can be life-changing. But this issue really does impact anyone. Doesn't matter what your ethnicity is, your religion, your politics. It doesn't pick and choose. Like, Sometimes things just happen, and it's usually the things you never imagined for yourself. And then you need to be able to have choices. You can choose whatever. You can choose not to have an abortion. You can choose to have an abortion. You can choose maybe some other option, adoption or something like that. But the point is that you get to choose.
So I just want to thank Riata again for sharing her story. These abortion storytellers are really taking incredible risk. They're telling deeply personal, painful stories that they really shouldn't have to tell, but they're doing it because they're committed to shifting the public's perception of abortion and changing public policy. So we're just so grateful to her and so many others who've put themselves out there and put their families' most difficult challenges out in the public to benefit all the rest of us. So there's a couple of things you can do to help us make sure we're breaking through to more Americans about the reality of abortion care and why it is healthcare. You can join us. You can share this video. We're going to put links to our friends at Abortion in America who have really compelling content like Riata's, but so many other stories. We're going to keep sharing many stories like Riata's over the course of this podcast. So share, ask your friends to share. This is the best way for us to explain to as many Americans as possible why abortion care is so necessary in this country, in all 50 states, not just a few states, but for everybody. I want to thank Abortion in America for their partnership. They are a national effort to lift up voices impacted by abortion bans. So follow Abortion in America on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and visit abortioninamerica.org for more stories. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks again for being part of the conversation with us.